All right, so our next chore is to, whoops, I didn't mean for you to see all that just now. I want you to listen a little bit. So our next thing here is code practice 1 from section 2.4. And for this one, we want you to write the code to input a number and calculate the square root. And then you're going to use absolute value to make sure that if someone enters a negative number, that it makes it positive to find the square root. We'll do this later. Maybe we created imaginary numbers. Lastly, you're going to write a print statement that states the final outcome is, and of course, we're going to need a colon. Behind that is, and then a space, followed by the square root. And remember to change the final outcome to a string. Excuse me. So we're going to input a value, and we're wanting it to be an integer. And then from there, we're going to find the square root and work from there. Okay? Simple enough, I'm hoping. So to do this, the very first thing we're going to have to think of is the math library. And from that math library, we're going to need fabs, which is the absolute value. Sorry, everything's shaking, isn't it? This silly table. And we're also going to need square root. And square root is, as the bell sings, it's our square root value. Okay, so we're going to need to call these from the math library, and that's going to be fairly simple. So first thing we need is an input statement. So here we go. I'm going to say, first thing we're going to do is import math because we're going to call these two from that library. So x equals an integer because we don't want decimals right now. We could make this float, but right now we're just going to use integers. To input, enter a number, colon, space. Remember to put the colon in this space. Now, once we do that, we're done. We're going to print. This is what they ask you to print. The final outcome is, make sure that's a capital T. Put a colon there, space, and then plus. Now, here comes the fun part. Since we're printing a number, we have to put string in front of it, str, math.square root. But before we do the square root, we have to find the absolute value of this number, whatever it was. That's where math.fabs come in. So we find the absolute value of this, then we square root that, and then we print the final value. Okay, so again, we want to import math so that we can use absolute value and square root. And then from that, we create the rest of it. We do the square root, we pop the value in there, and we say, hey, that worked out okay. And I think that should be fairly easy for us. So now I'm going to use those same concepts, still with my import math, except now we're going to go to code practice 2 of section 2.4. This time we're going to write a program that accepts a number as input and prints just the decimal portion of that number. So now instead of integer, we can just copy this for right now. Instead of integer, excuse me, instead of integer, we're going to change that to what? That's right, we're going to use float because we want to enter a decimal. It means our decimal floats around. The values behind it can come from anywhere. So here we go. Excuse me. So first thing we're going to do, import math, because we're going to want whatever this answer is to work out that it gives us an answer correctly, that the difference. Okay, and so now here's our input, x equals, now again, ladies and guys, use whatever variable you want to there. I'm using x equals float, input, enter a number, colon. It's the same thing as up here. Make sure you capitalize that E right there. Then, once we have that number inputted, we're going to do this. We're going to come up with another variable. Wow, I'm imaginative on it. I used x, then I used y. Now, int stands for what? Int is integer. And so what this is doing is making whatever that value is, it's just taking the whole number part of it. So if it was 4.2, it would just take the 4. And so once we know that value, we have our original input, we have the whole number of that, and then we're going to take it and we're going to subtract them. And I just left it as x. You can make that a whole new variable if you want to. I didn't. I wanted to keep it as x. X equals x minus y, this x minus this y. We're assigning that difference, the decimal, what's left over. This is the number with a decimal. This was the whole number part of that. And then we print. The final outcome is string. This is where I'm at fabs. I want the absolute value of x. Okay, again, this could be z, that could be a, that could be whatever value you want it to be. Okay, so one more time, import math. Know that we use float because we want to input a decimal. We use integer here to get rid of the decimal part of that number, whatever's behind the decimal point. We subtract them to find out how much there was. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Any questions? No questions? Well, great. Hope you have a great day.